Welcome back to Giants Mania. Today we'll be talking about some of the later free agent signings the Giants made. There's three guys I'm going to talk about here. So the last time I talked to you guys, I think it was after the Adoree Jackson news, and since then the Giants signed Ryan Anderson, an outside linebacker from Washington. They signed Zach Fulton, a right guard, a center, a left guard from the Chiefs and Texans. Then they signed Danny Shelton yesterday, a defensive lineman, nose tackle, defensive tackle, who was with the Browns, he was with New England, and he was with Detroit last year. So I'll talk about those three guys. A lot of draft rumors going around. I'll touch on that stuff in future videos. So I'm almost done with my entire draft research. I don't like to talk about these players unless I watch them yet. Or watch all of them, I should say. Of course, I've watched some of them, but I'm almost done with that stuff. I still have to get to the outside linebacker class, which is definitely, a lot of guys are rumored to go to the Giants. Jason Owe, maybe Kwity Paye, someone like that is rumored to go to the Giants. We'll find out about that. A lot of Gregory Rousseau, talk about him. So, I'll do my research on those guys and then make videos about them going in the future. But I think I'll have, as I said before, I'll have two draft videos. One mock draft for what I want as a fan and another mock draft video for what I actually think the Giants are going to do. So I have those videos coming out probably like a week, maybe 2 weeks before the draft. And I'll do some videos before that. I want to do community page questions. That just opened up for me because I got the 1,000 subscribers. So thank you to you guys for that. So I'll do some community page questions coming up in a few days, hopefully. But hopefully you guys enjoyed this video and let's get into it. So we'll try to go in order here, as I believe Ryan Anderson was the first one signed out of this bunch here. So Anderson got a one-year, $1.1 million deal. I have not seen the money yet for the other two guys. I do know they're one-year deals for all of them, which I do like, so I will say that's a good thing. But for Anderson, he's had, one pretty good season in 2019. He had 5 forced fumbles. I don't know how many sacks that he had. He had 4 sacks in 2019 as well. That was the most he's ever played in a season. So when I watched him, though, I wasn't too impressed. I mean, he's a pretty explosive player. He has, decent movement skills, but he's just not, his hands weren't that good. He wasn't that strong. He didn't have any impressive pass rushing moves. A lot of his sacks and his pressures came on plays where the quarterback was holding onto the ball for 5+ seconds. So I wasn't all that impressed in what I saw from Ryan Anderson, but I will say, I give the Giants credit here because in free agency, you're supposed to fill in your needs, and the Giants are doing that here with all three of these moves, honestly. I mean, Danny Shelton, I think, might play a big role for this team, but for Fulton and for Anderson, they're filling in some needs here. So while I don't expect much from Ryan Anderson, he is a guy that just fills in a need for this team because you have Lorenzo Carter coming off an Achilles tear, which is not easy to come back from. They have O'Shane Ximines coming off an injury. I forget what the injury was, but he's coming off an injury. They have Cam Brown in year 2, Carter Coughlin in year 2, guys that were, 6th and 7th round picks, I believe. Yeah, 6th and 7th round picks. So you can't, bank on those guys to work out. So you just throw in Ryan Anderson. I do believe Anderson right now is probably the outside linebacker number 5 if I had to guess, but maybe he plays his way into more playing time. Of course, Kyler Fackrell left for the Chargers, as we know. So we'll find out what type of role he plays, but he did force 5 fumbles in 2019, which was good to see. Played a career high, as I said, 49% of snaps in 2019. 6 sacks in 4 seasons is not too impressive, but as I said, it's a one-year deal. You're filling in depth. It's not the worst thing in the world. I'm just not too excited about it. I didn't watch Ryan Anderson and go, oh, that's a good player right there. So, that's the one downside to it. But still, not a bad move. It fills in a need for the Giants right there on the depth chart. So, for right guard Zach Fulton, people immediately look at the 11 sacks allowed last year in 2020, which was the most allowed in the NFL. And now the Giants, ironically, do have the 2 highest sacks allowed guys on their team. Andrew Thomas allowed 10, I believe, last year. He was 2nd in the NFL. This guy, Zach Fulton, was 1st, so not where you want to be right there on a list. But for Zach Fulton, I want to know how many of those sacks were Deshaun Watson holding onto the ball, because as you guys know, Deshaun Watson, like Russell Wilson in a lot of ways, holds onto the ball for a very long time sometimes. So I can't really say all 11 sacks were Zach Fulton's fault. I have admittedly not gone back and watched all 11 of those sacks given up, so maybe I'll go back and do that one day. But he does have a lot of experience and versatility. He played a lot of center in 2017, a lot of left guard in 2016, played a lot of right guard the past 2 or 3 years. So his pass blocking grades, according to PFF, which I know some of you hate, but I don't know how else to evaluate offensive linemen and really put it into any type of stat, but his pass blocking grade from 2014, I believe, which was his first year, to 2019, which was back in his Kansas City days and the Texans days, was 75.5, which is a pretty solid pass blocking rate, but his number dropped a lot this year. I mean, his numbers this past year were not that great. He did play in all 16 games, which I like, and I think right now Zach Fulton might be the starting right guard on this team, assuming they don't draft anybody. If they do draft somebody, then Zach Fulton's probably out, but I guess it depends how high the draft pick is, but while I don't want to go into the season with Zach Fulton as our starting right guard, at least they have somebody, because Shane Lemieux, while I did like the pick because it was a really good value for the 5th round, he proved last year he's not ready as a pass blocker yet. Hopefully this offseason he can work on that and fix it. But it's nice to have Zach Fulton as some insurance, just to have another interior offensive lineman who he's not the worst in the world, but he's also not that good. But maybe you can get by with some average play. I mean, the interior offensive line, it's not as important as an offensive tackle, but you still have to be competent there. You still have to be a decent player. So I think Zach Fulton's had his moments where he's been decent. So as long as he does that for a small stretch, I hope the Giants don't rely on him to play all 16 games. But if you have to throw him in there for a little bit, he can be okay. So it's not the most exciting move. But once again, it's a 1-year deal, probably a small amount of money. So it is what it is. Now this one, I'm probably the most excited about this one. Danny Shelton, who's been a nose tackle, defensive tackle. He was drafted in the 1st round, I believe, by the Browns back in like 2014, 2013 maybe. And 2015, I have it written down, duh. But anyway, 2015, 12th overall pick. He's 6'2", 345. So the numbers haven't came out yet, but I do believe that the Giants probably don't have the most money right now. So they probably give him a 1-year deal. Maybe it's $2-3 million, maybe not even that much. So hopefully it's not that much money. But I do like this move. When I saw this, I was like, oh, that's actually a good move, because Danny Shelton just a couple years ago was a really good interior defensive lineman for the New England Patriots. And of course, Joe Judge has that connection. They also have that connection with Kyle O'Brien, who's this new executive, the Giants. He's like a personnel executive that the Giants hired recently, so I guess he's a man that brought him over to Detroit last year. And a lot of former Patriots went to the Lions, like Danny Amendola, Daron Harmon, Jamie Collins, I guess Danny Shelton as well. And Shelton had a down year in 2020, I will admit that. But at the same time, I look at it from like everyone's perspective. No one went to Detroit the past couple years under Matt Patricia and had a good defensive year. Like everyone that went to Detroit just played like crap, it seemed like. Like Jamie Collins went there, didn't play nearly as well as he did in New England. Desmond Trufant went there, didn't play as well as he did in Atlanta. Maybe he's a bit older. But just everyone that went to Detroit the past couple years on defense didn't really improve. So I don't know how much of that is a Matt Patricia and a scheme problem as compared to the player. Danny Shelton's only 27 years old. And when you go back and watch him on film, very impressive stuff. Like he is moving people, really strong hands, and he knows how to fill in those A gaps and B gaps and be a good run stopper. He had a good pass rushing grade last year. His pass rushing grade over the past 2 years is actually 68.6 combined. So that's actually not that bad. His run defense grade from 2016 to 2019 was 76.2, which is pretty damn good. So the Giants are getting a solid player here. And right now, like on their depth chart, I guess you can put as Dexter Lawrence as a nose tackle maybe, but he played a lot of like defensive end for them last year. So assuming that the defensive ends next year are Dexter Lawrence and Leonard Williams, the middle spot still needs to go to somebody. And right now it's Austin Johnson. They also have Danny Shelton on the roster. I would say Danny Shelton's probably a better player than Austin Johnson. So I would say right now, as we speak on this day, before the draft happened and all that, before the draft happens, I will say Danny Shelton's probably the favorite right now, at least in my opinion, to get nose tackle snaps and be the starter. So we'll find out how it all plays out next year, but I do think Danny Shelton's a pretty decent player, so I'm happy we got him. He's the guy I'm most excited about with these signings, but I will say once again, just to wrap it all up like I did before, I am happy with the way they approached the final days, if you will, of free agency. I know it's still going on technically, but this is really the second wave of free agents here. And while I don't expect anyone in this bunch to be an all-pro, I do think the Giants actually did a good job of solidifying their depth and going into the draft now, not having to reach on a certain position. And that's the one thing that always bothers me about fans with drafts. It's like they always say, like, oh, we got to draft a cornerback in round 1, an outside linebacker in round 1. Like, have we not learned by now as Giants fans that it's not good to reach on a position? Like, do we forget about Eric Flowers? Do we forget about Eli Apple? You're supposed to take the best player available, but also put positional value into perspective as well, because you don't want to take, run-stopping defensive tackles and running backs that highly, but if you're sitting there in the first round, and let's say the Giants, like the best player on the board is Patrick Surtain at number 11, I wouldn't say no to that. Like Patrick Surtain would probably fit this defense very well. And while the Giants right now do have Adoree Jackson and James Bradbury, if the Giants do have a guy like Surtain as the best player on their board, I would not be mad if they took him. It's an important position. He's a good player. I'd be fine with that. A lot of very good college production for 3 years for him. So I'd be okay with that. So that's just an example for you guys. But I wouldn't reach on an outside linebacker from the Giants just because we need an outside linebacker. So just take the best player available if it's an important position or a premium position, as they say. So that's pretty much it. I mean, you really can't hate these signings. They're only one-year deals, but let me know in the comments which signings are you most excited about. Me personally, Danny Shelton, but I do think he has a chance to start for this team next year, assuming they don't go nose tackle highly in the draft and assuming that Dexter Lawrence stays at defensive end. But we'll find out. But if you guys enjoyed this video, let me know in the comments if you want to do the community page questions or not. If so, I'll post there soon. We'll do some questions of me answering those for you guys coming up in the future. But if you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll talk to you guys next time.